Hello students, in this module we are going to do the golden age of Indian culture, and that is the Gupta Dynasty, and what were the impact of Gupta age and Gupta Dynasty on various fields of the general society in that period. That is what we are going to do in this chapter. So the important things that we are going to do in the golden age of India, that is, golden age is basically the classical age or the golden age of Gupta dynasty. We will be doing impact of Gupta age on education in India. What was the impact in the education system, or what new things they started studying, doing in the education changes. That is what we are doing. Impact of on science. There were certain people, researchers, things done in science. That is all the impact we are going to do about science in changes in the Gupta age. Next is impact on culture. What was the impact of Gupta age on the culture of India? What new things were added to the cultural heritage of India? That is what we have in this particular topic. And next is influence on literature. Even the literature, we are not talking about any particular language, but literature, the various literary sources, they were included in the literary, you can say, store of our country's heritage. So they were all the influence which were basically on different fields of the society. While we'll be doing about influence on literature, we will take a special mention of Kalidas and his works, and the three dramatics, important dramas that he has written, that we are going to do. They are basically Vikramora Vashyam and Malvika Dinimitram and Abhijanana Shakuntalam. So these three also we will be talking about more of his, not only these works but more of the works of Kalidas in this particular module. So here we begin with the golden age of Indian culture. Now Gupta period as already has been described as the golden age or the classical age of Indian history because of the high level of civilizations, and you can say the culture at that time was very progressive. So because of this it was called as a progressive age or a golden age for Indian culture. Along with the revival of Hinduism, because the Gupta kings even had many, as I told you, it was not only Buddhism and Jainism and tolerance. Most of the Hindu doctrines and Hindu customs were promoted during that time. It was Vaishnavism and all those things, Brahmanism, that was followed by many of the Gupta kings. So that is why it was, in a way, it worked for the revival of Hinduism. Next we see, besides not only bringing these particular changes in the society, it also brought many of the influences and changes in the fields of literature, science, education, culture, everything. Here beginning with the topic with the first part, that is influence or impact on education. During Gupta age, education was given the higher importance, you can say the utmost importance was given to this particular field, aspect of society, and that is education. This is evident from the intellectual output in various fields. Like during this time, many progresses were made in different fields, and when we talk about different fields, it is basically somewhere or the other related to education, because unless you don't educate them, people will not be able to know more about those particular things. So that is why we can say education was given the highest importance during the Gupta dynasty, and we can sum it up with the proofs that high level of progresses were made in literature, science, culture, everything. So ultimately all those things indicate that education was given a lot of importance. A lot of new concepts and things were taught to the people in the education. Here we see that there were many centers of learnings in the cities of that particular time, like Patliputra, Vallabhi, Ujjain, Ayodhya, Nasik. All these places became the main centers of education and imparting knowledge. According to the inscriptions, the teachers were learned Brahmins, and they were also called as the Acharyas. So all the teachers basically were the Brahmins, sages and learned people, and they were known as the Acharyas or Upadhyayas. And sometimes they were also given the title of Bhatts, Bhattas, Bhatts. So here these were basically the Bhatt or the Upadhyaya or the Acharya. Usually used to be a Brahmin who was a very learned person, and he used to teach all the kids about different aspects of the society, different fields of the social learning. Besides this, we can say these teachers were supported by the grant of the villages. It is not that like today we have, it was not the salaries given to them, not the children taken any fees. It was basically the grants, the donations which the kids or people, the village people used to give to these Brahmins. They used to live on that particular, whatever the help or whatever the support the village people used to give to these Brahmins, the Acharyas. Next we see that the disciples and she were called as Shishyas, had to learn 14 sections of science. So it is also known as Chatur Dasavidya. Chatur Dasavidya means the 14 different aspects of science which a Shishya, a disciple, had to learn from his guru or from his Acharya. Besides this, it's also comprised the education system also comprised of the learning of the Vedas, and then besides that 6 Vedangas and Purans and Mimansas, Nyaya, Dharma. All these things were the various teachings that were given to the taught by his teacher, that was obviously the Guru, the Acharya. And besides Vyakaran and the Satasahashri Samhita or Mahabharat, these were the various important books, epics, topics, and things that were learned by the students over there in their teacher's place. You can say even Gurukul system, or the learning was done in that ways only. So it was the Guru, the Acharya, it was his responsibility to bring up a child in all these fields, and that is how we can say that education was very important. It was very vast, a huge thing to do, and a lot of things to remember and learn and understand in the worldly things. In the Gupta period, the Jain and Buddhist systems of education assumed a different dimension, because now Buddhism and Jainism was flourishing over there and they were very well accepted by the society. So even there also the pattern of changing learning and education changed. It was Buddhist monasteries admitted students for 10 years, and the learning began from the oral method by repeating and chanting the things, or learning by heart by just speaking it out, not by writing it. So oral education was given to them, orally they were made to remember the things. Later it shifted to the reading of the literary texts. Still it was not writing, but now it was reading of the texts that were written by various other people in the monastery or maybe anywhere else, but the texts which were available over there regarding their particular teachings. The monasteries had huge libraries and important manuscripts were copied over there and were stored. People used to copy the important manuscripts, because remember, this is the time when there was no printing press. So obviously a copy of a literary work had to be literally handwritten, and when these were handwritten they were passed on to different other places. So people used to copy and store the works of the important literary works in their libraries, especially the Buddhist monasteries. It was done in this way. Students from other countries also came to India, and they also got, you can say, a lot of education about the society, also about Buddhism also in the Buddhist monasteries. And besides that, other such important education of the Indian Vedas and Indian culture, that was passed on to them. The monasteries were normally maintained by the help of the kings. The king used to give them grants and aids, and accordingly the scholars used to come from far and near. Even Fahin also spent, you can say, several years in the monastery at Patliputra, where he lived, learned and observed, and then even wrote about all those things, studying religious books in Buddhism. He did all that in Patliputra's monastery. Higher education was given equal importance. It was not that the basic learning of Vedas and general things, concepts of the society were learned, but even higher education was also given a huge importance in these particular universities, in this particular system. The two popular universities you must have done in the previous classes, Takshila and Nalanda, were during this time, and Takshila University was the first few centers in the world which offered higher education. Like today you have the Oxford, the Cambridge. In the similar way, at that time we had Takshila and Nalanda, and students coming from all over the world to these universities to get higher education. So that was the standard we have, and that is why we can say it was really the golden age of India. These universities, however, established before the Gupta Empire came into existence, and they were given even more patronization, promotion, and they flourished even more beautifully during this particular era. Nalanda University, if we do properly about it, we can say it was the most renowned educational institution in the ancient India, and it was located at Nalanda in Rajgriha, which is in Bihar. Lot of information about Nalanda University has been given in many of the inscriptions and even in the accounts of Hyung Sang, who was another particular Chinese Buddhist scholar. Just like Fahim came, even Hyung Sang came, and he has given a lot of things. He visited India during the time period of the king Harshvardhana. So he also wrote about his time period as well as a lot about the Nalanda University. The University of Nalanda had imposing buildings, huge buildings. There were nearly 8 colleges, and they were all built patrons, including one two by Bal Putradev, king of Sumatra. According to Hyun Sang, the whole university area was enclosed by a brick wall. So within a boundary, this entire university was established. It was even accepted or patronized by one of the kings, which is named as Bal Putradev, and it was given huge buildings, and lot of information was in a lot of knowledge was imparted through this particular university. Nalanda University provided various facilities to the students for studies, and there were 3 different libraries which were there, and they were called Ratna Sagar, Ratna Dehi, Ratno Dadhi, and Ratna Ranjak. So sorry for the mispronunciation. It was Ratna Sagar, Ratno Dadi, and Ratnaranjak. So these were the 3 different libraries, and nearly 10,000 books were established or stored over there in these libraries. And students from various countries came to learn from here, read here, and understand different aspects of life. We can say that students came from like areas like Korea, Mongolia, Japan, China, Tibet, Ceylon. Ceylon is the older name of Sri Lanka, and even from various parts of India itself. So the subjects taught over here were 4 Vedas, logic, grammar, medicine, Sankhya, Yoga, Nyaya. Nyaya is basically law, we can say, and the Buddhist works of different schools. That means different places, whatever they have written, literary works, Buddhist teachings, all those things were taught over here. Nalanda was not an ordinary university, it was a postgraduate institution to which admission was very, very difficult. So remember, at that time, getting that much higher, that level of higher education was in itself a huge thing of pride and honor, and it was given in India in our particular university, and that was of a world level, international level. Nalanda continued to be a beacon of light up till 12th century AD, and afterward it was destroyed by Muhammad bin Bakhtiar Khilji. That means one of the Khilji ruler. He came and destroyed the Nalanda University. He was a general of Muhammad Ghori. So today only the remains of its magnificence and glory can be seen, but this was a huge part of India's, you can say, glorious past from 4th, or you can say even before that, from 4th century AD till 12th century AD. It remained as one of the beacon of light and imparting knowledge, and people were benefited by it not only in India but different parts of the world itself. Then we see the second aspect, and that is science. In science, we see during Gupta period great contribution was made, and in many branches of science like astronomy, medicine, and even metallurgy, all those places. Brahma Mihira was one of the great astronomer, and he proved that that moon rotates around the earth, and the earth rotates around the sun. So it was much later given by other you can say scientists in 15th or 16th century, but we can say Varamihira was the first person who gave this particular concept, that it is the rotations taking place while moon moves around the sun, earth moves around the sun. So that is how we can say knowledgeable people we had during this time, and knowledgeable observations were done during this time. This was the impact of the age on science. The Brihat Samhita or Varamihira deals with astronomy, botany, and natural history and physical geography. Brahmagupta was a mathematician as well as he was an astronomer also, who was of this time, and he described the law of gravitation, you can say even centuries before Newton. We always gloat about Newton's law of gravity and say things, but it was before him that you can say Brahmagupta was the one who gave this particular concept of gravity. Metallurgy, or the science or study of metals reached an advanced level during the Gupta age. We have already done in the Vedic period and the Indus Valley period that gradually from Chalcolithic, from Copper Age to Bronze civilization and so on, the civilization moved on. And we can say while during the course of this moving on, they had a sound knowledge of metallurgy and the use of metals in various aspects of life. So we can say metallurgy and understanding of metals, how they can be used, that was at a very peak level. This is evident from the iron pillar at Mehrauli near Qutub Minar in New Delhi. Charaka and Sushruta were famous scholars of Ayurveda. So you must have heard about Charak. Charaka is basically an English word. Is Charak and Sushrut was these were the people who had a huge amount of knowledge about Ayurveda. Ayurveda is the science which deals with the medicinal facilities of the herbs. So they had a huge knowledge. Along with that, one of the important person that we have of this particular era was an astronomer called Aryabhat. Even on his name we had our spacecrafts also named. So he was a great astronomer, mathematician, and he was during the time period of the Gupta Dynasty only. He had written some of the important books, and two of the famous books that he has written are Aryabhatyam and Surya Siddhant. In this he has given some of his achievements, some of his observations, which are as follows. He said that the earth moves around the sun. It was several centuries before Europeans did that observation and came to that conclusion. He discovered the rule for finding the area of a triangle. So mathematically, how an area of a triangle is to be found, that was given by him. He calculated the exact value of pi, which was equal to 3.1416. It goes on and on, but he went on to find out this particular value. And then it is in his work Surya Siddhanta, he explained the exact cause of solar as well as lunar eclipses. What happens in these natural phenomena, that was explained by him in this particular Surya Siddhanta. Aryabhatta was acquainted with the decimal system and use of zero. It was later onwards we can say that these things were discovered, but Aryabhatta knew that he had the concept of decimal as well as the use of zero. So that is, we can say, how important or how intelligent people were at that time, and this was all because of the patronization and importance given to education during the time period of the Gupta age. Next we move on to the third part, culture and literature. This we'll do in the second part of this module.